up in the Chovos Halvavos in a very famous work written about 1,000 years ago by Rabbi Bachai, the Chovos Halvavos, obligations of the hearts, and there he spills a lot of ink in us recognizing the Creator, and it's only then, once we recognize the Creator, we recognize the endless wisdom in all of creation, and the endless ways that Hashem created the world that we benefit from this world. Then we could come to service of Hashem, our responsibilities towards God, our spiritual side that God created us, what our purpose is in this world. But it's with that stepping stone of realization of the world around us. So in a similar fashion, the Chozon Ish does the same thing. So now he spoke a lot about the human body and the spiritual parts of the body. So now he talks about a little bit about animal life. So here we go. 26. We could scroll down. We're going to do the Hebrew and English. The top is just Hebrew, the bottom's Hebrew and English. Okay, there it is. Yep, nope, too far. A little more. Perfect. Where it says 7. Bali hachayim mishtanim im ha'adam b'mivne aguf uv'chinosav usgulosav. Animals are similar to people in the structure of a body, its characteristics, and its capabilities. Choimer gufon basar adam gid etzem the karma. The material of their body is flesh and blood, connective tissue, bone, and skin. Veheim bali and nefesh chiyunus. They too possess a life force. Bali chushim kamo adam. They have senses like a person. Nizonim kimnei adam. They get nourishment like a person. Bali shnei minim zachar nekeva. They have two genders, male and female. Moisar adam and a behema. But humans' superiority over an animal is the fact that he has intelligence and his ability to speak. A lot of people get lost because of the similarities to animals, and people think we're sophisticated animals. We're not. We are human beings. We're a completely different category entirely. We have the ability to discern right and wrong. An animal does not have right and wrong. An animal is nature. And that goes together with our soul. An animal doesn't have the same soul as us, but an animal does have a ruach. It does have a spirit of life. And we do share similarities to the animals. And fascinating enough, Nachmanides, the Ramban, in Parshas Emor, in Vayikra, in Leviticus, says, when speaking about the prohibition of consuming blood, right? We know when we even though we do ritual slaughter, you still need to salt the animal to remove the blood, right? There's a salting process. And the Nachmanides in talking about that says because the blood is where the spirit of life is in, and we have a spirit of life, and an animal has a spirit of life, and it's not fitting for us to consume that. And he explains that there's a part of us that we do have an affinity towards animals because we do share certain parts to animals. But again, it's a grave mistake to think that we're just sophisticated animals. Of course, we're not. We are completely separate and different. The animals are in this world for us to utilize in a positive way, of course, to serve the Creator. Let's continue. Bali hachayim mishamshim esa adam. Animals, here it is. He says it. Animals serve humans. Oil, like an ox carrying the yoke. The chamor lamasa, a donkey carrying heavy loads. Adam. Others provide food for humans. Called ubeitzim, milk and eggs. So I'm providing wool for his clothing, right? Some of themselves, God set up a world that they are for human consumption. The nibur besugim shainim. They were creating a variety of classes. Uvaminim rabin, numerous species. Umizonosehem shonim zemizem. Their diets differ from one another. Mehem shein b'nei adam nenemehem. There are also some animals from which humans derive no direct benefit. Right? Kamoy chayes torfus, such as predatory beasts. Unechashim b'shkatzim v'ramasim, snakes, vermin, and crawling creatures. Those are animals that humans typically stay far away from dangerous animals. But they too are necessary and provide hidden, indirect benefits. So we should never think that certain animals that are in the world that we don't really use, well, they're redundant, they're not needed. Says the Chozon Ish, it's hidden, but everything in this world is very purposeful. Everything God created, and everything has tremendous purpose. And he does say, we should know of it, God forbid, sometimes a person is punished by them. Sometimes a person can learn wisdom or ethical teachings from them. Let's see the note on the bottom. If we could scroll to 55, I think it's very worthwhile. The Gemara in Eruvin discusses ethical teachings that had the Torah not been given, humans would have learned by observing certain animals. We would learn modesty from a cat, which takes pains not to defecate in the presence of a human, and it covers its excrement. Fascinating. Anyone have cats as pets? It's very discreet when it goes to the bathroom. Not to engage in theft from ants who store food for the winter during the summer, and one ant does not steal from another. Unbelievable. We learn from ants. Not to commit adultery from a dove, which is faithful to its partner. So of course the Torah says we're not allowed to, person's not allowed to commit adultery, a person's not allowed to steal, and we should be modest. But you see in the animal kingdom that there are aspects. Yeah, no problem. Okay. There are aspects. Hold on one second.
Well, I have cats, dogs, and I have a fox. I actually have 3 foxes.
Wow.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
what was that? Yes.
I have outside a bunch of cats. We have a dog inside of us, and across the street we have 4 foxes.
Wow. Wow. You like a
Yes.
little you have a little zoo going on over there.
Yeah, actually, I'll show you. We have good. They come to me. That was good. They have the kids, with dad and the mom. So they actually
That's
come when
great.
he we able to go their food and everything. They came up, so I'm very proud. And Derek goes in there. That's good. How many people could be with foxes all the time?
Yeah, foxes are very fast. I encountered a fox once here where I live, and I was shocked. They're very fast animals. And they have wonderful tails. Anyway, they look wonderful. But from a distance, obviously, from a distance. Anyway, okay. So we learn not to commit adultery from a dove, which is faithful to its partner, and proper conduct from a rooster, which first appeases its mate and then has relations with it. Perhaps the wisdom of the Chazon Ish speaks of here can also be found in this Gemara. An ant teaches us to save when our finances are doing well, so we will have money if we suffer a financial downturn. All right, and King Solomon says that in Proverbs and Mishlei, go to the ant, you lazy one. A lazy person. So there's another, they don't bring that verse over here, but that's another thing we learn from ants. Little tiny creatures like ants. How many people think about ants? We could learn a lot from an ant. A lot you learn. They store their food for the winter. They're storing. They're involved throughout the summer, right? Sometimes they wreak havoc in your house, but what are they doing? They're storing in the warm climate, in the warm time for winter, and that teaches us a lesson to save up. Don't when it's good times, save up for if a person, God forbid, has bad times. So there's a tremendous wealth of knowledge that we glean from animals. Let's go back on top. Ukivar galnu b'mitziusa. We've already become accustomed to their existence. Anu nirgashim ki mibaladam haya olam chaser. So we feel that without them, the world would be incomplete. Imagine we don't have certain animals, extinct animals. It's a tragedy. We don't have these animals. We can't learn from them. We can't see them. Deina olam yafe v'shalem. The world is not beautiful and complete unless the predatory beasts are in it. By the way, they say a note on the bottom where you could see it on your own time. We should remember we should find a way to share the source sheet. If maybe you or one of us could post it on the group afterwards. So if anyone wants to look over this, I skip a bunch of the notes on the bottom, and there's a lot of information on the bottom. We just don't have time to go through all of it, but it's very worthwhile to read it. A roar of a lion, Aryeh Shug Milo Eno, right? The verse says, I believe it's in Isaiah, a lion roars, and who's not in a city? Who is not afraid? The roar of a lion. And that is a mushal, it's a parable, it's an analogy to fear of God. God is hidden in this world, but he creates things that we could see the divine wisdom, divine providence in this world. And one of them is the roar of the lion, says the prophet. When a lion roars and you tremble, has anyone ever heard see the lions in the zoo? Has anyone ever heard a lion roar like in real life? It's extremely rare in the zoo for them to roar, I think. I've never seen it. The lions in the zoo are like, they look very lethargic, like they're sleeping on a rock, right? But if you're able to see the roar of a lion or be, close to it, it's terrifying. But that's an analogy for us to be afraid, to have reverence for the creator, to have fear, that we shouldn't do whatever we want. We shouldn't say whatever we want. The person has no fear. They sometimes they're unhinged, and they do things, they say things. But when a person realizes there's a creator, there's a God, you cannot do whatever you want. There's going to come a time where there is a judgment, there is a judge, and it's not supposed to cripple us, it's supposed to motivate us to act properly. So different things we see in life are those things we see in life are supposed to motivate us to do the proper thing. Okay.
Just $11 per year with a 5-year term.
Okay, let's continue. If we could mute, if everyone can mute their things. A lot of background music. Okay. Background noise. Having introduced his discussion of Amunah by noting that a spiritually attuned person will be accustomed by the quest of the purpose of life, Chozon Ish writes that the honest seeker will observe the precision with which humans and the environment were created, and it will be evident that there is a creator who designed and fashioned mankind to physically survive and to thrive as an intelligent being. The creator also fashioned animals and vegetations that are vital for the survival of mankind to actively serve humanity or otherwise provide mankind's continued survival. The Chozon Ish now highlights that even the truth seeker will often miss the awe-inspiring wisdom and things that are familiar to him, and his attention is drawn only to those that he's accustomed to seeing. The Chozon Ish points out that this tendency is not a function of the intellect, but another part of the human mind at work. Okay, so let's see what he's talking about over here. Continuing on, we're on the top of 28 now. Next page. A little further, I mean the Hebrew English, yeah, a little further, a little more. Perfect. Okay. Rav HaHergo, through great familiarity, Makheh es regesh hispilus hanefesh harui. It diminishes the feeling of amazement. It diminishes the feeling of amazement we should experience mikol chai ba'asher hu chai, from the very existence of each living creature. Instead, we are amazed only by specific unusual species. Appeal, as when someone sees an elephant, or a monkey, akbar, adama, a mouse that is half earth. Till you see, but to see, okay, different animals which or creations which we don't know about today. Veloshin Aram Sham, look at the Rambam over there. Shem Chayes Adam is Libni Adam. And the other beasts that resemble humans. There's such a thing in the Talmud. I don't think he's only talking about gorillas. And those who report on natural phenom say that the Adnei Asada say many things that cannot be understood. But its speech sounds similar to that of a person. Sounds like a gorilla a little bit almost, right? But it could be that it's some sort of mystical creature, something that we don't have today. Uvirash Sham, and the Rash says, one of the commentaries of the Mishnayos says, Chayesh Shema Yidoya. The Adnei Asada is an animal known as Yidu'ah. You do its form is similar to that of a person in every way. Do its its face, its body, its hands, and its feet. It seems like it's like the Aborigines was somehow attached to the ground and some sort of humanoid, something which we either don't have anymore or it's hidden from us. I don't know if Bigfoot comes to mind. I'm not saying he's saying Bigfoot exists. That's not what I'm saying, but whatever it is. And similarly, it is human nature to marvel at creatures that are out of the ordinary. Such as those afflicted with deformities, we shouldn't know it, or nanas bioser, those that are very short. Let's see, 29. Or are extremely tall. They used to have in the circus long ago people that were very unique. Siamese twins, such a thing. This one is rooted by imagination, not in intelligence. Like sometimes we're taken aback by things we're not used to seeing and extraordinary animals and whatnot. The Chozon Ish now discusses the conflict between the intellect and the imagination and the human struggle to integrate these two forces. Okay, number 8. Let's continue the next one. Imagination is a faculty that has disengaged from the intellect. Let's see note 58. It's a little mystical, but let's see it. The root of this word is apparently related to the word atzilus, which is the highest realm from which matters related to the spirit descend to lower realms. While the imagination does stem from the higher realm of the intellect, it disconnects from it and serves as a separate force. So this word is likely associated with the identical word in Ezekiel, Chesko, which Radak interprets as separate or distanced. The imagination really could go really off, right? It could really go wild. But it clearly comes from the intellect, and it's also imagination really helps us be very creative in the world. Okay, let's go back on top. It is superficial, non-analytical. And its nature is to entice the person. Let's see note 59. The Ralbag in Bereshis, note number 59, writes that the serpent that enticed Chava, right, first woman, the sin, represents the force called imagination, which made her fantasize that there would be great benefits to partaking in the tree of knowledge. That's how a lot of sins are. It's dimyon, it's imagination. You think you're going to be amazing if you do this, you do that, things we shouldn't be doing. And that's how the inclination gets a person, because it would enable her to distinguish between good and evil. Enticement to sin, according to Rabbi, is not a byproduct or a casualty of the imagination, is the very essence of imagination. Let's say Yitzhahara, it's all imagination, because really God's will is the true, is what truly exists. Everything else is the Yitzhahara imagining certain things will happen. Really nothing happens outside of the will of Hashem, the will of God. And therefore imagination could be rooted, it could go, so here he's saying on the negative side of imagination that it entices a person. Let's go back on top. And to suppress his mind, so that it should not entertain thoughts that override his imagination. Right? So the imagination, and they say it on the bottom over here, it's a twofold thing. Not only does it make fantasies that entice a person, but also commanders his mind, preventing his rational thought from gaining control of his actions. Sometimes a person could be so oblivious to reality because they're just living in La La Land, right? The intellect, on the other hand, is the constant adversary of the imagination. So it's the battle between the imagination and the intellect. The intellect is rational. It keeps you grounded. The imagination a person could run really wild. A lot of times we make bad decisions. We regret them later on. People buy things that they think, oh, if I get this, then this is, and you realize later it's really just imagination. So it's disconnected with your reality, and it really was not like you fantasizing, not like you're thinking. Doesn't turn out that way. Let's continue back here. Intellectually, a person recognizes that his imagination is unreliable. Yet his imagination will nevertheless occasionally triumph over the mind. Let's go to the next page. When it overwhelms the person.
Well, I don't like that guy.
The phenomena of the imagination overpowering the mind is particularly hazardous when it exerts its influence on a person's outlook on life, preventing his rational mind from forming his worldview.
Can you do a fact?
Divrei Hayamim, the Chorus Olam, chronicles of history and world events are important. They have much to teach a wise person on his journey through life. History repeats itself, right? Baal told us that Avar Yesad Adnei Chachmasai, and he will base his wisdom on the foundations of the past. But however, because a person loves to innovate ideas, and to present them to the public, many falsehoods have accumulated in history books. Right. That's what they say. History is his story, right? If you were to read about the American Revolution in an American textbook, right, or history book, it would be a different outlook than the one written in Britain, right? They would have a different take on the American Revolution, right? Or people from the South, let's say during the Civil War, people of the North, there, because history is his story. So the Chozon Ish is saying that history is very important, but history also is sprinkled with things that may not be as accurate, or it may be. It depends on the vantage point. A person does not naturally detest falsehood. Chozon Ish says a very starting line. Now he says a lot of people they don't detest falsehood. Some people Rabbi also. Contrary, many people love it. And engage with it in a friendly, playful manner. Right? Historical revisionism. Right? A person has a tendency to embellish, to say things that are not 100% correct. A wise person must therefore sift through the tales of authors. The Kabbalah Ha'emes to accept what last page now, 31. What is true, and to dispel the falsehoods. The Chozon Ish now explains why imagination is an obstacle to a person's quest for truth. Here, in separating fact from fantasy, the imagination has much latitude. Because the nature of imagination is to rush ahead, and to reach a decision. A human being is very fragile. His intellect is very fragile. Before the mind has even prepared the scales of judgment, we already make up what are our preconceived notions and what we want to be, and then we work backwards. Very many times people look at others, judge other situations based on their own subjectiveness. To carefully weigh each matter and its merits. An imagination has instantaneously determined its verdict, deciding what is true and what is false. We could read the note in the bottom and end with this note, rush to judgment. But we see in this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion is Kisisa, which speaks about the episode of the golden calf. And the golden calf really was a terrible tragedy by some of the Jewish nation, which was rooted in imagination. It was rooted in they thought that Moshe Rabbeinu was not coming down, that Moshe died, and they need to replace him with something on par. And what they were used to in Egypt was idolatry. The mixed multitude, the Erev Rav, the nation. Rashi says when it says the nation, it means It means whenever the Torah just says the nation, it means the mixed multitude, the Erev Rab, the people that make trouble. But you see that in this week's Torah portion where they were, and in fact, because they were on a high level, this Satan, the Yetzer Hara, showed them an image of Moshe not being alive. It was all optics. It was the imagination running awry. And we find this also in Pirkei Avos. Akina hatala v'akava motzinas adav min ha'olam.
Ethics of the fathers.
Thank you very much. Yes, remember ethics of the fathers. Thank you. It says that jealousy, desires, taiba, person lusting after material desires in this world, and also honor, running after honor, or feel that you didn't get the proper honor and you're chasing after honor, they remove a person from this world. Because again, what is that? That's also imagination. It's not, you're not grounded, you're not being realistic, and you're running off. You're romanticizing things that are detrimental for you spiritually and otherwise, and people around you. And sometimes people give everything, they just give up everything just for this fleeting imagination. They ruin their entire lives by this fleeting desire of, whether it's jealousy, rage. A person goes into a jealousy and they could see that they're not grounded. They're not living in a reality. It could take them over completely. And as well as going after desires and honor. And that's, again, imagination that's not in check. Now, of course, there's always two sides of the coin. So imagination is also very important. The Chozon Ish now is focusing on how important it is for us to remain grounded and rational. And our imagination can lead us awry. But our imagination also is very important, because a person could be innovative. That's the same muscle in the mind of thinking out of the box, so to speak, right? So obviously it serves a purpose, serves a tremendous purpose, but it goes both ways. And a human being needs to keep it in check. Let's read the note and then we'll call it a night tonight. The Chozon Ish is teaching us that a wise person seeks to base his foundational principles on history, as he should, but in order to do so, he must separate fact from fiction so he can base his perspectives exclusively on the truth. For example, if a community experiencing a rise in anti-Semitic incidents or world Jewry as a whole is coming under attack, this book was written the author, the Chozon Ish, wrote it many, many years ago, but the editor of this edition, who's writing this footnote, was published a few months ago. So unfortunately, it's apropos to the time. A person might debate in his mind whether the correct response is to protest such incidents in a public, vocal manner, or for Jews to lower their profile and attempt to fade into the background rather than draw further attention to themselves. Historical accounts might lead to further confusion, because some writers will bemoan the fact that Jews were silent when anti-Semitism was on the rise in the past, and will point to the atrocities that followed. A docile acceptance of Jew hatred as proof that the Jewish community must immediately confront any such incidents in as vocal a manner as possible. Other writers will point out with equal certainty and ample evidence that publicizing such attacks serve to further provoke our haters, resulting in more vicious and frequent attacks. Which historical account is presenting an accurate and truthful portrayal? Here is where the tendencies of the imagination versus the intellect come into stark contrast. The imagination, with its emotional and superficial view, as the Chozon Ish explained at the beginning of this section, rushes forward and fulfills the person's mind with glittering images of marches and rallies, which the general community will join the Jewish people, and the Jews are protesting the hate crimes perpetuated against them. Unfortunately, that's not the case many times, right? He perhaps in his mind's eye, he will even picture himself being accorded some personal honor for leading such efforts. The rational mind, on the other hand, will lag behind slowly and methodically, weighing the costs and benefits of public protests. True, these will draw attention from society at large, and many fellow citizens will not stand for the increase in hatred, but can it truly stop the attacks from those who seek our destruction? Or will such protests reinforce our arguments about Jews being too powerful or too vocally a minority, and we should silence them for once and all? The rational mind might want to present valid viewpoints and important questions for both sides of the argument, but by the time it is ready to start weighing the matter, the imagination may have already led a person to render a firm decision so that he can no longer hear the voice of intellectual reason. And that's of course, that's spot on. That's very important that a person has a balance of both. There's 16 million Jews in the world. There's 7 billion people in the world. It's a little tiny drop in the bucket. It's unbelievable, and it's a spiritual legacy that we have such an effect on the world. We have such a positive effect on the world. We're such innovators, and we have there's tremendous blessing that we have. Not saying that other nations don't have it. Other nations also have a lot of wisdom and a lot of great things to offer. But the fact that there's so few Jews in the world, there's only 16 million Jews in the world. That's 0.16 of the population, whatever it is, right? 0.06, I'm sorry, right? Of the population. It's unbelievable how much of an effect that we have in the world. And that goes to say that there's a spiritual side to our nation that we have, that God watches over us, and we have tremendous success in many areas, being the fact that we're a drop in the bucket. But so that comes with, what is the right way to act. And the Chozon Ish is saying that sometimes a person's imagination could lead them astray, thinking that, oh, if I do this, then this is going to happen, and not necessarily. So that's the idea. That's what he's explaining. How do we get onto this? He's reflecting again. The Chozon Ish is painting a picture, and he's reflecting on the human condition, on the world that God created, and we could see so much wisdom. He started off by the animals, and then he went back towards the human race, that we have the ability to imagine, and it could be a negative component to it, and we have to remain. And he seems to emphasize the Chozon Ish, the negative side to it than the positive. And we were just saying that there's obviously a positive side. It doesn't mean that there isn't, but it's just that we have to see both sides to it. Okay, so Mir Hashem, next week we will continue with the Chozon Ish, and he's going to eventually. So this work eventually does turn into a work on faith and trust in God, and Emunah Bitachon. And like I said, he's building this pyramid. He's building this structure of, from the ground floor, that we're able to see God if we just reflect, if we just take a step back, if we just meditate in creation, we just look and see everywhere we turn the endless wisdom throughout life. And that will lead us, that will be a springboard to higher goals, to being able to have faith and trust in Hashem. And of course, in this work, he grapples with difficulties, with when bad things happen, what's the Jewish take on it. And the Chozon Ish has a very unique approach, a very unique and a very rational, as we expect, a very rational approach to it. Where the Chozon, we're going to see the Chozon Ish's approach is not that having faith means everything's going to be amazing. It's realizing that God is in control and he does what is best for us. Not that everything is going to, automatically, the cause and effect we don't see in this world. And many times we don't, sometimes we do see it. For whatever reason, God decides when yes, when not. But the having the ironclad faith, the Emunah, is based on how we see the world, how we look at the world, and then he's going to go off into, of course, our Torah, that we have this tradition all the way back from Mount Sinai. So it's very fascinating work, and this is how he's starting it off. Okay, let's hold it over here.